Chapter 3. A Permanent Reminder. Summary. The kids are in for a painful surprise that won't be leaving them anytime soon. Izuku was still trying to understand their situation the next morning when a few of what they now knew were aliens, came back into the room. The students still didn't have a lot of information about what was going on, nor any escape plans, so part of Izuku was buzzing with the chance to learn more. Izuku hadn't been up for long, but his brain already felt like mush. The sheer enormity of the implications of their kidnapping had him basically reevaluating his entire worldview, which was not a fun task. The group of aliens approached the cage with what looked like space pepper spray, at least to Izuku, and pointed it straight at the students. Before the teens even had a chance to do anything, a greenish-yellow vapor was shot into the cage. A shocked gasp was evidently the wrong move, because before Izuku knew what was happening, his brain began to fog. His muscles seemed to go lax as his body stopped responding to his brain. He was laying on the floor of the cage in a daze before he could even blink. Part of Izuku's brain was marveling at the speed at which the drugs worked, but the rest was sluggishly panicking at the fact that he was being removed from the cage, his limp body thrown harshly to the floor by smooth digits. Izuku wasn't able to move his head to look at what the aliens were doing, but he could hear the sound of movement behind him. It was nerve-wracking, even through his daze, to be completely at his captor's mercy, not even able to see what was happening. Then, a blinding pain erupted from his left shoulder blade. A muffled exhale was all his body did, but internally, he was screaming at the agony. It was on a level unlike anything he had experienced before. His skin felt like it was melting off, raw to the point where even a soft breeze would increase the torture tenfold. His breath picked up steadily into pants as his trembling body was painfully jostled. He was carelessly thrown back into the cage, thankfully landing on his front. But that didn't stop the blinding pain mixed with the hazy drugs to white out his vision and leave him slipping into oblivion. Izuku eventually woke up to overwhelming pain in his shoulder and the sounds of anguished whines and grumbles surrounding him. He weakly pushed himself up, prompting his shoulder to somehow get even more overwhelmingly painful. But it thankfully subsided when he lifted the weight off his arms, though a choked scream did escape his tight throat. "Deku?" Uraraka whimpered. He could see her, curled in on herself off to the side of the mostly unconscious bodies of their classmates. "What happened?" he asked, voice scratchy from who knows what. I can't say it," she cried. Another pained whimper sounded as she curled up on herself even more. Izuku's pain-hazed brain felt like it was missing something. He looked at the rest of the group lying on the cage floor, mostly unconscious, but something looked a bit off. Each person had a small hole missing from their clothes on their left shoulder blade, right where Izuku's pain was emanating. He crawled closer to Denki and used his right hand to brush back some of the slightly melted leather jacket from the hole. Izuku's blood froze, however, when he moved to reveal a fist-sized brand stamped into his friend's skin. A circular design with swirls and lines stood out in a bright, irritated red on his shoulder. Focusing, Izuku could now make out the faint smell of burned flesh. He felt a gag rise in his throat as his shaking hands revealed the same symbol embossed onto all of his friends' backs. He couldn't tell if the weird script present within the burned-on beetle wings were words or not, but at this point, he couldn't bring himself to be curious. They had been branded. All of them, if the stifling pain in his shoulder was anything to go by. Each shifting movement caused the frayed edges of his clothes to brush up against the raw flesh, but it was nothing compared to the growing horror settling in his stomach. The group still didn't know why they were there, but it couldn't be for anything good. Now they had been branded like livestock. It was not painting a pretty picture, but they were still alive, so hopefully whatever they were needed for included their continued survival. But even if that was the case, they now had a permanent mark from their abduction. It would be something they have to carry around for the rest of their lives. Who knew what it was even meant to signify? The only consolation Izuku could think of was that it would be easily hidden by clothes. But that wasn't much relief when the continued pain and a growing exhaustion began to shut down his brain and body. Izuku just slumped back to the ground in a heap, careful to not irritate his branding. His branding. It wouldn't be going away anytime soon.